Happy Monday, everybody, and another week to begin. Welcome, everybody, to the Directors Roundtable. This evening we have with us Jessica Walker, Richard Johnson. John Saraceno is going to present tonight on how to get prepared for a hurricane. Buford King, Richard Peterson, Chief Hollinghead, and our Treasurer, Kim Creech. So we will get started right away. If you'd like to start off, it's all yours, Jessica.
Thank you, Lynn. So the only two updates I really have are about census and our anniversary. Our Complete Count Committee, we're in the process of appointing that Complete Count Committee for Census 2020. They will convene for the first time in early August with the U.S. Census Bureau for training. Our whole goal is to get to as many people as possible here in the city so that we get an accurate representation. We know that the growth here in Fairhope is astronomical. We want a really great, accurate representation of that. But that complete count is also essential for allocating of federal and state funding, for determination of seats for each state, for the House of Representatives, and also for the redistricting of state legislative seats, county and city councils and voting districts. So we want to make sure that we get everybody. So be prepared to hear more about census coming up. We know it's a long way away. It seems like a long way away, but it's really not that far. And then in addition, the 125th anniversary, we've started efforts for the 125th anniversary now. The way that we're going to do this is we can always look at the history of Fairhope. Fairhope has a robust history. But we also have pretty awesome stuff happening in the community right now. So what we are doing is asking people to submit their Fairhope stories in 300 words or less, so we can kind of have a snapshot of where we are as a community right now. Those are all going to be housed. There are already 2 or 3 up right now. They're going to be housed on the City of Fairhope website. There's a button on the homepage at fairhopeal.gov, and you can see those stories and see photos of the people who have submitted them. We're hopeful that we'll get lots of those in between now and November. November 15th is the actual 125th anniversary of Roundup Day, whenever they decided that Fairhope was where they were going to have their Fairhope of success. So we will be announcing information later about an event on November the 15th to celebrate that anniversary. But if you have a story, a Fairhope story, we want to hear everybody's. So just send that to 125th at fairhopeal.gov.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, Richard.
Yeah, just a kind of couple of updates. I know projects have a lifespan of their own. Just kind of a watershed moment with our first BP Restore Act grant, the Working Waterfront Improvement Project. We have gone through our first round of procurement on the professional design services, and we were able to get that list down to 50% of the respondents, and we're doing in-person interviews with that top 50% on Friday. And with our goal is that we will have a recommendation and request to execute a contract with council possibly as early as the first meeting in August, if not the fallback is the second meeting in August, as well as we do have our respondent for the grant administration. So this process is actually starting in that design and feasibility phase.
It's been a long time coming, and
yes,
all of a sudden it's here.
As you know, the last council meeting, we did get the contracts approved for the 2 sidewalk projects, 2 tap projects, Twin Beach and Manly. That contractor wants to start construction the 29th, which is a week from today, so we're trying to schedule a pre-construction meeting this week, as well as the contractor who won the County Road 13 sidewalk project from Sedgefield down to our soccer complex on Manly Road. And we're trying to also schedule a pre-construction conference this week and hopefully have them under construction by the 1st of the month. We've got the North Mobile Street Drainage Project on tonight's agenda for acceptance of that bid, and we're excited about that. And probably the 2 others that are near and dear to several people's heart, the Downtown Pedestrian Safety Traffic Improvement Project is under advertisement right now, as well as the Fairhope Docks bulkhead. So hopefully we'll be bringing those response to those bids to council in the month of August and getting those projects moving. So got a lot going on, excited about it, and just continuing to improve our infrastructure and our facilities. That's what we got going on in Public Works.
Super. I'm sorry, you have absolutely nothing to do with your time.
Well, thank you.
John.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about hurricane preparedness. And when I say hurricane preparedness, it's really not just hurricane preparedness, but it's all hazard preparedness. It could be a flood, it could be a tornado, it could be multiple different things we're preparing for. I think that living on the Gulf Coast, I think a lot of times that we have problems and we don't always get prepared like we should. Like everyone at this table, are we prepared right now for a storm? No, not everyone is, and it happens everywhere. So let's just talk about a couple different things. I'm going to talk about a couple different things that I think is very important, and then I'm going to talk about where you can get the resources to help you prepare, because we have those available throughout the city. First thing I want to talk about is I'm just going to cover a few things. You can't cover everything because you're not going to write it all down. They're not going to memorize everything they're hearing. So we'll talk about. They say prepare for a minimum of 72 hours. But that's not really, that's a rule of thumb. Really, the best thing to prepare for is 5 days, which is 120 hours. That's really important to prepare for that amount of time, because they say 72 hours. That's the time it takes usually for the government to get in and help, the county to get in and help, and assist us with recovery and all the major resources that we need that we may be depleted of. But usually it's more like 5 days.
So you want us to take care of ourselves for
Right.
5 days
Yes,
after?
we
Okay.
are responsible for our own personal preparedness. And preparing for 72 hours is a good rule of thumb, but 5 days is more realistic. The time to prepare is now, and the reason it is now, it's really before hurricane season. We all should be prepared right now. What ends up happening, and I give you a prime example, at 5 days out, they say a storm's coming our way and it's headed towards us. People get out there and they all hit the stores. So everyone at one time is everyone's trying to get the same supplies at one time, and you're all out there fighting for it. Back when Hurricane Ivan came through, and this is the best example I can tell you, and Stephanie, you were here during Ivan? All right, we had fuel issues. Everyone was trying to fill their vehicles up with fuel. It was so bad that all the police, and even myself, and I wasn't a police officer, we had to go, and we were stationed at all the different gas stations, controlling the lines that were wrapped around the buildings to get gas. And then there was a time there when they actually wouldn't allow anyone to get more than 10 gallons of gas at a time. I think it was 10 or 15 gallons. So if you prepare and do all this stuff ahead of time, you're not fighting all this traffic. You're not fighting the people getting gas. You're not fighting people for supplies. You're ready, so you're able to go into your yard and start picking up things to fly around and do all the important things to prepare your house in the event we have a major storm. With that said, I want to talk a little bit about mandatory evacuations. For those of y'all that don't know, the shelters in Baldwin County, they're hurricane shelters, but they're shelters of last resort. They used to be just called shelters, but now they're considered shelters of last resort, because when they give you a mandatory evacuation in the county, they want you to leave. And the shelters of last resort are really for people that don't have the means to evacuate, or just for whatever reason can't evacuate. And that's what they're really for. So, if you're staying around and all of a sudden at the last minute you decide you have to evacuate, it could be an issue. So it's really important when they say mandatory evacuations, that's exactly what it means. To evacuate, it's mandatory. During Hurricane Michael, there was 34 people that lost their lives. And out of those 34 people, 20 or 30 of them still may be around if they were evacuated. A lot of them wait till the last minute. It's too late. A lot of them were stuck on the beach in Panama City Beach and Mexico Beach. And had they evacuated, they might still be here today. So, that's worst case scenario. We don't like to think about that, but it's reality, and we need to think about that. That was just the bare minimum things I want to cover right now, but I want to show you throughout the city of Fairhope. I've been putting out publications for multiple years now. We have all these publications here that are in multiple city buildings. They're in the Welcome Center, they're in the Nick Center, they're in City Hall, and the City Warehouse. These ones, the FEMA publications. But this year, Baldwin County took the bull by the horns, and they decided to do a preparedness guide. In coordination with all the other cities in Baldwin County, they supported the publication, and this publication was put out. It's a really, really good publication. If you don't have anything else, you need to stop and get this. This is available at City Hall, the Warehouse, and the Nick Center only. If you can't find one there, to let me know, and we'll make sure we get more into it. Right now, they should be highly stocked up. This covers a tremendous amount of information. It covers shelters. I'm going to give you an example, a couple things that's in this thing. Bear with me a second here. Disaster education has all your different websites you can go to learn all kinds of stuff. Another good site to go to, if you want to remember it, is, oh Lord, what is it? I know I got it right on here. Preparedness, oh Lord. Excuse me on that, ready.gov, www.ready.gov, I apologize for that. I knew that. But anyway, there's a lot of other information. This has everything you possibly need. If you just get one of these, it'll help you get prepared. And we have these other ones that have preparedness for adults, preparedness for people with disabilities, preparedness for businesses, and everyone should have a plan. You need to follow your plan and get prepared. And don't be one of the ones that really need help in the end when everyone's tied up and they can't do it. You got to remember, once tropical storm force winds make landfall, there's not going to be anyone out there to help you. They're not going to be coming out to see you. They're going to be sheltered down and being safe, and we're not going to come out again until after the storm. So we need to be prepared.
Okay, great. Everybody take warning. Thank you very much, John. Buford.
So I'm going to retreat to the podium for just a moment.
Okay.
So good afternoon, everyone. And the planning staff has been working on a Greeno Road corridor overlay for the past couple months. And the purpose today is not to try to review every single detail by any means, but more just to explain what has been placed into the public realm, where that's located, and just to very quickly flip through it during this meeting. The slides that are on the monitors right now, and I'm just going to very quickly go through them and just explain very briefly what we have. This will be described in great detail during the August 5th Planning Commission meeting, as well as a work session preceding the Planning Commission meeting. And what we wanted to do was pre-publish the slideshow for that meeting, as opposed to the long documents that go along with this corridor overlay, because this corridor overlay is an amendment to the zoning ordinance, and a lot of detail, an extremely large amount of detail. The slideshow that is currently published on the city's website, and before I leave the podium, I'll explain where to find that. Of course, you see the cover right there. We lead off with 2 slides full of a timeline, and the timeline is just that. And I even noted on the very first slide, going all the way back to July of 1987. That is when the Corridor 98 Committee report was first published. So going forward, and Joe is in control of my computer here for just a moment. Each of these events has the actually has the web address where it's published shown. And so this is in the first 2 slides. Then we go on to, we explain from the comprehensive plan. When the comprehensive plan was updated in 2015, it included a slide. There we go. Thank you, Joe. So, Joe, I can see only on my screen. There we are. That's great. This is live meeting at its best. But I included this slide, and I wanted to take just a second to describe it here. This is from the 2015 update to the comprehensive plan, and the slide says this was part of a survey that was during that comprehensive plan update. It said, would you like to see Greeno Road developed commercially from Fairhope Avenue north towards Daphne? And the answer was 70% no. So I thought that was very interesting, wanted to share that. 2 more slides from that 2015 comprehensive plan update. For example, do you think connectivity of roads, sidewalks, trails, parks, and commercial property are positive? And the answer was more than 90% yes. The second slide, again, from that 2015 update, are you concerned about what Greeno Road and State Highway 181 / County Road 27 will look like in the future? And again, the yes answer was about 85%. So there's several slides that explain what the Greeno Road corridor, the GRC as we call it, explains the basic definitions, where it is, what is included, what is not included. So for example, on the slide we're looking at right here, the underlying zoning districts within the Greeno Road corridor are not changed. Several slides, about 4 slides of frequently asked questions, some in very great detail. Some of the questions we've had from citizens are you doing anything about lighting standards? We've answered that. The GRC is only applicable to properties within the city limits. We've clarified that. The approval process is explained. We note again that this includes properties within the city limits, not outside. The districts themselves, the Northern Edge District, North Village Center, Gateway District, Fairhope Avenue Village Center, Southern Edge District are labeled. We note here that this does not include areas zoned RA, R1, R2, or R3, your single-family residential areas. We've also recognized non-conforming uses within the GRC shall still be governed by the nonconformity section of the zoning ordinance. So if there is a nonconformity, it can still be a nonconformity as allowed by the zoning ordinance. This does not change that portion of the zoning ordinance. We go through several more slides where it explains some of the technical requirements, and I think probably what will generate the most interest will be the illustrations of what the districts look like, beginning with the Northern Edge District, showing the build-to line of the buildings, the width of the landscape buffer, the width of the right-of-way width will vary. Supporting document from the comprehensive plan describing why there's a North Village. The North Village Center, its description, what it looks like, what it requires, what it restricts. Now, we'll also pull in some examples from the visual preference survey that support why a district is drawn the way it's drawn. The Gateway District, and explaining here the allowable uses and the restrictions within that. You'll notice I found an edit that needed to be made that is placed on the slide. We have an example of how staff would evaluate a site plan using the GRC standards should they be adopted. We'll reference back to the comprehensive plan and the visual preference survey quite a bit. Fairhope Avenue Village Center, again the illustration. The Southern Edge District, again the illustration, description of the allowable uses and the restrictions. Make some closing remarks. The closing remarks, I have some notes in there where there are some references, again, back to the comprehensive plan, what the comprehensive plan requires, what the comprehensive plan asks for. And you notice I've noted with balloons that the GRC overlay process was contemplated in the comprehensive plan. There's a statement in here that says commercial land use along Greeno Road are very likely to depend on high traffic counts and are likely to mimic the uses seen on other major corridors throughout South Alabama, since the citizens desire that Greeno Road not turn into another bad example of strip development. And so I'm teasing our neighbors in Mobile about it not being Airport Boulevard, which we've done quite a bit. We won't elaborate in great detail here in this meeting, but in order to make the GRC work, there are routine revisions to the rest of the zoning ordinance that had to be made. And so we'll go through that during the work session on August 5th. So for example, convenience stores, service stations, car washes, automobile repair facilities. We've had to create, and notice again, I have a supporting survey from the visual preference survey. I'll explain in great detail this convenience store and how it's supported in the revisions of the zoning ordinance. I borrowed this from Opelika Road in Auburn. And then we'll show examples of the revisions to the zoning ordinance and show it with strike-through text, infrared for new text. There was not a section in the zoning ordinance about drive-through lanes, etc. So we've clarified those by adding a section. And so I'll note here, this is a brand new section added to the zoning ordinance to explain drive-through lanes, drive-through windows. This is what we found from research from other zoning ordinances in different parts of the country. Another big issue was lighting. On this slide, the one paragraph at the top was all the zoning ordinance had on lighting. So I will thank Walton County, Florida, because their lighting standard is the inspiration for this one right here. So now we actually have some standards and measurable standards by which lighting can be analyzed, and also a standard by which an application can be based. We also had to add some additional definitions to the zoning ordinance, including car wash, heavy equipment. So the conclusion here, I borrowed the cover of the 1987 Corridor 98 Committee, Road to Chaos. I borrowed that cover and placed it on the closing slide. But I'll read this. The GRC is a continuing implementation of the comprehensive plan as well as response to the requests of Fairhope citizens expressed in the visual preference survey. Further, the GRC is the first step in possibly introducing a form-based zoning code to the city of Fairhope. So to reiterate, we're going through the adoption process of adding a Greeno Road corridor overlay to the zoning ordinance. The next meeting, the next formal meeting regarding this topic will be the Planning Commission meeting on August 5th. Preceding that regularly scheduled meeting, the regularly scheduled meeting's at 5 p.m. We will have a work session beginning at 4 p.m. for the benefit of anyone, certainly anyone wishing to attend, and to hear the discussion between staff and the Planning Commission. So probably what we will do, the ground rules for that meeting, we will focus on the districts and the technical details during that portion of the meeting. Then when we begin the regular meeting, I'll fall back to the front of the slideshow, go through the frequently asked questions, go through the timeline, explain the notice requirements that we will follow for the meeting versus the meeting where there's consideration. During the August 5th meeting, staff is not asking the Planning Commission to consider or take action on the GRC, but to hear it. We will ask the chairman to allow a period of public comment, to allow a public involvement period of time. We won't convene a public hearing, but we will ask that we allow a period of public input during that meeting. Then staff will actually request that the Planning Commission take action on this endeavor at the September 5th meeting, which will be on Thursday, September 5th, in lieu of the normally scheduled Monday meeting due to Labor Day. Preceding that meeting, there will be a formal notice procedure because that precedes a meeting where action is taken. But Mayor, I appreciate the opportunity to go through this, albeit very quickly today. I wanted to explain that this is published, and to find this document on the city's website under Departments, Planning and Development Services, then under Planning and Development Services, Planning and Zoning. From there, look for the Planning Commission tab. Open up the Planning Commission tab. There is a space for where the agendas and minutes of the Planning Commission meetings may be viewed. When that is opened, the work session has a standalone section separate from the regular meeting. That agenda can be quite lengthy and may take a long time to download. So we identified the work session singularly. Just this document is currently there right now and may be downloaded and viewed prior to that meeting on the 5th. So I appreciate everyone's time in letting me go through this in this level of detail.
Great, thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Buford, in the time, this has been out in multiple pieces, multiple forms now for months, and it's been discussed about in several meetings. How many direct responses have you had from either a stakeholder or whatever with a specific request or for a change in any of the language? Have you had any person say, well, if you could just change this, I would be happy? How many of those have you actually had?
That is a great question from Mr. Johnson, Public Works Director. And as far as requesting a change, I haven't had a citizen or a stakeholder outside of the Planning Commission ask for an actual change. There are some routine edits in here based upon from what I heard from the Planning Commission during one of the previous meetings. But I haven't had a citizen reach out and ask for a specific change of a dimension. There are a lot of dimensions in this overlay. I haven't had a request for a specific change for that. I have had probably about a dozen questions from citizens about basically just where it is and what it is, but not a detailed request to change anything. A lot of the changes we've made in it have just been natural edits that we heard either from input from the Planning Commission or that we discovered on our own to better word everything. So that's a great question.
Okay. Thank you, Buford. Thank you. Richard?
Okay. Well, my news isn't all that great, I don't think, but I did want to talk about the tropical storm here, Barry, Hurricane Barry, obviously, in Louisiana, but in the rain event that we had, and you take baby steps, as you try to get a camera truck and you start assessing systems. We have a point repair contract now that we're working on to identify broken mains that we can repair at a single point so that we can slip line the entire main from manhole to manhole, and part of our rehabilitation work. We've got manhole lining contracts out there too that allow us to look at a manhole like we had on Church Street, Church and Fells, where the force main that came into that manhole had eroded. I think at last count we had 32 some odd single bricks that had washed down the line that were part of the manhole at one time, and we were able to fix that. We opted not to do an emergency repair at that time. We felt like we could do it without trying to, you know, make it look like we were overreacting in that sense. But I'm saying all that because we have an old wastewater system, and it is, you know, probably dates back into the early 50s, and the materials they used at that time were brick and mortar for manholes and clay pipe for sewer, which is a great material to resist the acidity of wastewater and the gases that it creates, but it's not a great material for taking differential loads from traffic or from settlements of soils. When the soils get saturated, they tend to settle, and because of that, movements along the trench line where that pipe is laid can cause it to fracture, and so we have a lot of that. We have 90 to 100 miles of that kind of pipe to identify and work on. We have over 3,000 manholes that, you know, we need to identify, and we've started that process. But that process is a long and tedious process, and it takes a lot of time. And so we think we've made a few advances in what we've done to minimize overflows for now. Our goal obviously is to reduce and eliminate overflows altogether. But during Barry, we had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 overflows that we reported to ADEM. That was all that we could identify, and even two of those were overflows that we had reported to us by citizens. And but anyway, the Middle Street, which is one that I think has a pretty long history in Fairhope, it's a area that is served by the Valley Lift Station, which is between Nichols and Middle at Dogwood. And I had gone by there twice Saturday morning, the morning that most of the rain came through, and we looked to be in pretty good shape at Valley Lift Station. The ditches were full, and the water going through the box culvert was as high as the top of the culvert pipe was, and the head wall was keeping that water from going over the road there at the corner. But the manhole just above that was dry. And then probably about 12:30, 1 o'clock, we had a second band of rain that came through that was more intense and lasted a little longer than the first several bands that had come through. And it inundated that system, and we had overflows at that manhole, and then one at the corner of Dogwood and Middle there. And we went to the lift station and looked. Of course, the pumps were doing the best they could, but the water in that Tatumville Gully headwater area was over the driveway of the lift station. And we feel like the water had gotten up to places within the collection system that we hadn't seen in a while. So what we're doing is trying to smoke test those lower line areas, see if we can find a manhole frame that's been shifted off of the manhole itself that allows water just to pour in when it gets over a certain level. We're looking at any breaks in the grout of the manhole that would allow water to come in. So if you see us in places where you don't expect anything to be, there is a sewer line there in places, and we are going to be trying to smoke test those places to eliminate that. As a result of that particular overflow, we also had all the lift stations that the doghouse lift station was flowing with 2 pumps on at that time. Valley was flowing with 2 pumps on at that time, and we had an overflow at Young and Johnson, which is in the headwaters of the big mouth gully that runs beside the wastewater plant, and that lasted several hours during the peak of all of it. We went down at Roar, which is on McGowan Street on the west side of the airport. That there was a overflow there, which the first time we'd gone by there, it was dry. But the second time we came by, the culvert, they increased the capacity of at County Road 32 from the April 14 storm events, and the FEMA funded upgrades for that culvert under 32. Well, that was great and wonderful for 32, but the box culverts that go under the runway of the airport were never upsized to match the capacity that was provided on 32, so that water was backed up to where that whole system was inundated too. And the one little old manhole that's just right at the top of the hill before you go down into that place, it was where the wastewater was coming out. And of course, we've talked about raising some of those. We've gone through and sealed those manholes since the first time this occurred, and we have sealed them, but we've not raised them. So now we're looking at potentially doing something to where we can raise those sections and try to prevent that. Thompson Hall Road, we had that lift station serves Quail Creek and River Mill and Firethorn, and of course, when that particular station backs up, if emergency response people are having to worry enough about flooding and fires and other hazards, they happen to have to worry about sewer overflowing inside the floor drains of the fire department. And we're not happy with that, but that's how we sensed that overflow, and it was a mess in the fire station. And John will tell you, it's not something we're proud of at all. But in this particular case, we're looking to do the side stream storage capability at Quail Creek that'll back off River Mill, Quail Creek, and Firethorn from getting to that Thompson Hall lift station. So we can allow whatever peak flows that we're getting from it during these rain events, and nobody, can go through that part of the system. It's relatively new, and there should be no excuses for there to be this many inflows coming from those newer systems that we have in place. But we got to go through those. I know one thing that came up just last week was with the county wanting to keep the wastewater infrastructure on the side of the road. Well, there are places where we have manholes that are on the sides of city streets where people park. The people sometimes can cause those manhole frames to shift and be problems within the yard. Sometimes people take them out just to be able to drain their yard from them. And so, I'm meeting with the county this week about, I think it's more important for the infrastructure of the wastewater from a gravity collection perspective to be in the middle of the road where the crown of the road is shedding the water away from the manholes, and the traffic is more protected from the asphalt and base material of the roadbed versus, the side of the street where there's parking or sidewalks or other things that people can take advantage of. If they want to drain something that they shouldn't be draining, it's easy to pop a manhole off and drain something, which makes
Are you going to go into that a little bit more? The
Ma'am?
percentage, regardless of what we do as a city, the percentage of kind of human error that
Well,
needs
just
to.
from my experience now, what we find with conditions where inflow becomes obvious, a lot of it is obviously, an issue of rehabilitation needs on the collection system. But each one of these collection systems reach out into private property. And from my experience with either lateral cleanouts being busted, people deciding to drain the house gutters into cleanouts alongside the house, and other cross-country lines where we're not really able to patrol them adequately, and people find ways to get stormwater into them. My experience is, you're probably looking at 50-50 in terms of inflow generated within the right-of-ways of our collection system versus on private property. So one thing we're going to do, and Mayor, I appreciate you bringing that up, we're working with the Alabama Coastal Foundation. We've developed a Utilities United campaign, if you will, and we're going to try to address some of the issues of private property and how the collection of wastewater on private property is just as important to be sealed and tight and waterproof from rain events as it is when it gets into the streets. But so we're going to be working on that campaign, and we're going to do some good things with that. The other two, actually the citizen called us on the north section overflow we had, and it was 50 to 75,000 gallons actually, and it was pretty significant. And it had nothing to do with the pumps not running. It had everything to do, though, with the bypass that was placed on a switch to allow the people maintaining the grease out of the wet well to shut off the alarm system. So there was no alarm that gave us an indication that we had an overflow or a high level at that lift station. And if we had an alarm, I don't know that there was much we could do with it because it was pumping as best it could. And that second wave of rain that I was talking about afternoon is when that system got inundated. Now I know that they're doing some smoke testing in that area too, and I was told this afternoon that they found a pretty significant breach in a manhole that was probably underwater at that time. So we hope we can get in and get that fixed. But the Twin Beach lift station was an embarrassment. We had a meeting with local people there Wednesday morning, and we were going to meet them at 9 o'clock Wednesday morning to look at odor control. And I had a odor control pilot program in the last budget that we've never really been able to get to, but we are going to get to it now, and we're going to get to another one. And you know, it goes back to how difficult it is at times to be able to start working through the process of procurement. And I'm not down at anybody. I know that I'm not used to a municipal system, but I can tell you that there are better ways to get equipment purchased where you don't have to go through the resolutions and everything it takes to get something done. And we're just going to have to decide if we want to fix that issue or continue to drag our feet in what it looks like, I'm sure, to the public in getting anything done. And that's just half of the problem. The other half is we need more depth in these utilities, and we need people, we need to be able to pay people what they can be paid to leave here and go work somewhere else, because they've done that, or they can retire and do something that's not quite as stressful like I once did. And thinking about it again, but that you know, it's hard on them. I mean, and nobody wants to have to respond to an overflow. Nobody that I know of working in our department.
I want to add here just real quick that we do have an Auburn study that's going to update our comp study. So hopefully in 6 months we will be at a place where we can be very competitive.
But so anyway, I hope so. So anyway, the Twin Beach episode, we came to the lift station at Twin Beach at 9 o'clock, and the fellow we're going to meet there complaining about the odors filming what is an overflow at Twin Beach lift station. And so we got people there, and of course he thinks it's every day, this happens all the time, and really it doesn't happen all the time. But the transducer system, which takes the level of the water in the wet well and tells the pumps to come on, it had gotten caught up in so many flushable wipes and other solid debris that it was floating with the level of the wet well, so it never told the pumps to come on. And that goes back to, you know, having manpower and capability to maintain these things in a more efficient manner, because we shouldn't have to wait until we see something like that to know that there's a problem with it. And the problem is we're so busy trying to just do the day-to-day things that we sometimes don't have time to reach out and try to do anything proactive. And we got to get better than that. But anyway, that was a complete embarrassment for me, and we don't want to lose any of the people's confidence that we're capable of working on this wastewater system. We just want you to understand that we inherited it with a lot of issues, We know how to fix those issues, but it takes time and effort and money. And we can reduce the amount of effort if we work on personnel and procurement issues. We're not going to be able to fix the time and money part. It's going to take all of that. And we do have one big transmission project that we'll be bidding Thursday. We put the bid date off from Tuesday to Thursday, and that'll be the Bayou Drive, Fairhope Avenue transmission line that will have helped the Johnson and Young Street overflow, because the transmission capacity wouldn't have caused it to back up at that low point. But, you know, the Thompson Hall thing, the side stream storage at Quail Creek would have helped that. The north section street, the side stream storage at the Woodlands would have helped that. And the south section area that we had a breaker on a pump trip that we were able to fix, and wasn't a major thing, but the side stream storage obviously at Twin Beach would help all of those issues. So that's what our condition is today, and thank you.
So it's the same as yesterday
I'm sorry?
and 4 years ago? I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are having progress. I know it doesn't sound like it, but we are.
Chief, you have some fun news to deliver.
I have some exciting news for everybody. This is going to be this weekend, which is the July 27th from 10 to 2 at the Methodist Church at the Christian Life Center. We're going to have our 4th annual back to school event. It's the back to school with red, white, and blue, and that's it started out as a community outreach program from the police department, and since then we have added the fire department is out there helping us, and they give their time. We've got several of our churches that are involved, and then several of our community organizations are helping us. So that's our back to school with red, white, and blue. We will, like I said, we're going to kick it off at 10 o'clock. This year we're doing a little something different. We've got our water balloon fight. So I just get excited when I think about that. I think about the kids.
Just for the children, though,
Yes.
and the
Well,
police
actually,
officers.
the police officers.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
like not
With
citizens
the
and
ki-
the police
no.
officers. It's just the kids.
No, it's the kids versus the
Okay.
police officers. So yes, we are excited about that. But it's for those who need a helping hand getting their school supplies. We're going to actually have backpacks. We'll have school uniforms. We're going to have school supplies. Overall, I think it's about $300 worth of supplies that we are able to, give each child. In the past, we've
Very
helped
impressive.
about 300 students every year. So we encourage everyone to come out, even if you don't need a hand with anything, you don't need your school supplies, or you don't need a backpack, you just want to come out and be a part of it with the community. We're going to have hot dogs, hamburgers, chips, drinks, and we're just going to have a great time.
Right.
It's always been fun, I know.
Yes.
Everybody's looked forward to it.
Yes.
That's great.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Yeah. No.
What I've been working with is into our local banks that has our operating money, our reserve monies, and so last week I got results. I had put out for bid our reserve funds and got back a good rate. I actually have a floor of 2.10% is the floor, meaning in the next 3 years, if rates drop below that, we are guaranteed that rate. Anything greater than that will be the 91 T-bill plus 20 basis points. So as of last week, that rate was 2.31. So that's the bank I'm going to go with, is Centennial. And then our current bank that has our Compass, has our operating accounts in, that rate is now at 2.25.
From what?
That was from 0. So they
We have to know where we
Right, we
came
gotta
from.
show.
Yes. So what the bank did was just to waive fees. And so in this negotiation that I did, I am setting some funds in a non-interest bearing account to offset all the fees. So the fees would run about $45,000 a year. So in the agreement, we're setting $2 million aside, which, when you take the interest rate, it's the wash of it.
Mhm.
And so what I've come up with, the calculation, we had some reserves that was in a bank earning 60 basis points, so it's 0.60. And so we were earning some fees in those accounts, but the net gain that we will gain with all the funds is $500,000 this next coming year I'm putting in the budget.
Talk about found money.
Yes, that is some found money. So I'm excited when I was doing the calculations today, just to be able to add that much more to the budget and all the funds.
It's fabulous.
Yes.
Mayor,
It's a
you
big
have
update.
anything?
No, I mean, I'm going to give my mayor report,
Okay.
where I've got
Okay.
some consolidated, that's at the beginning of the, for those who are listening, at the beginning of the council meeting, 6 o'clock.
Okay, great. We do have council work session begins at 4:30, and I know the K1 Center is in everybody's mind, and the survey results are going to be discussed, as well as the community engagement update on that. So K1 Center will be a topic of conversation that I know is on everybody's mind. All right, thank you very much, and we'll see everybody at 4:30. Thank you.
Right. Thank you all.